Mr. Homam Alghorani.
Thank you very much, guys. Thank you for coming. I really appreciate that. So I hope you have enjoyed your lunch earlier and the drinks we provide. Okay, so what is Startup Zone? So Startup Zone started around November 2017. So we were a small gathering. So it started as a gathering of entrepreneurs, of startups, also of people who wanted to start a business, but they are not sure how to start. So we were, can you go to the next slide? So we started there, if you see the picture down there. This is how we started. So 4 or 5 people meeting, discussing things, they talk about the daily challenges. Then we did the second round at my office. So we had a slightly bigger group. I see some of the faces are still here, like Yanto. Then we did the third meetup, maybe slightly smaller. Then we had the fourth one, which was slightly bigger. So we had around 30 to 40 people came up. And that time we discussed digital privacy and how important digital privacy in this age. And actually it is still related to AI, because later you will see during the discussion, with more AI, with more technology, our privacy is getting less and less, because everything now is monitored. We have sensors everywhere, so we are overwatched by AI. Next one. So we didn't stop at meetups, because we realized for meetups or events, we cannot really scale up and reach a wider audience. So we started, me and Patrick, and it was Patrick's idea. He approached me and told me why we don't do something else on social media. So we started something called Startup Zone Talk. And we managed to interview many entrepreneurs and experts in many different fields. So our latest interview was with Adeline. She's here, maybe you can network with her later. And before that, we have Joe McGuire from MyMind. He's in FinTech. Same thing with who's in FinTech, Mehdi Hassan. He's from Bangladesh. And he also started a company in Malaysia doing FinTech, and also in Singapore and Australia, doing financial services for migrants. We have like Dr. Mazlan there in the middle, doing IoT. We have TradeQuest, Leo. We have the CEO of GoCar, Alan. We have the only CEO with Mohawk, Chris Reed. You did that interview better. We had Pixie. We have different people also in blockchain. We had a student there, 19 years old, who started an event platform. So if you want to book your event or wedding, you can just go online, see the available, get quotation in it. So I was amazed by his story. He's just 19 years old and he's running his business in Singapore and in Malaysia. So that's all about Startup Zone. Now we move to the next section.
Okay, for this round of Startup Zone, we did something different. Okay, to lighten up our mood a bit before we delve into our field discussion later on, we have a very special guest this afternoon. He's been doing stand-up comedy for 2 years and hails from Subang Jaya. Guys, put your hands together for Mr. J.
Alright, thank you. Kodak, make some noise! Thank you so much, Startup Zone, and especially Homam for inviting me. How do you pronounce your last name, Homam? Alghorani. You sure you don't have a brother called Algorithm? No. That's okay. So yes, as mentioned, I've been doing stand-up comedy for 2 years. Okay, turn up the music. Thank you. So probably just want to gauge the crowd a bit. Like, who here has paid to watch a live stand-up comedy show? Make some noise, show some hands. Okay, good. A few of you. And the rest of you watching for the very first time? Yeah, those watching for the first time, make some noise. Yeah, thank you. So yeah, probably talk a bit about myself. I've been doing stand-up comedy for 2 years, which means it's longer than any of my romantic relationships that I have. Actually, screw that, it's actually longer than any romantic relationship that I have, because I have none. Even though I have a ring, I am married to my work. Alright, let it slide. And yeah, it's going to be that kind of night. Yeah. Oh, well, still daytime, so. Where was I? Yes. Some people say, like, you look like a stereotypical kind of person, but I say yes, but don't worry, I'm not here to sell you any insurance, Amway, Coway, Lee Chong Wei. And some people say, like, you look like a certain finance minister of Malaysia. Well, look only, but nothing related at all to Lim Guan Ling. But if you did have a secret love child, this would be the end result. The hairstyle, the glasses. But unlike him, I can't afford to buy a bungalow at a discounted price. And so as the MC introduced, I'm from Subang Jaya. Any of you been to Subang Jaya? Yeah. And especially if you love bubble tea, please go away, because it's very, very difficult to get out of there. And for those of you who probably wonder, does Subang Jaya have any meaning? Well, it has. It literally means earrings of success. But I've never been successful in finding any earrings. And sometimes, don't worry, it's okay to laugh, right? If you find it funny, just laugh, just clap. If you don't find it funny, just pay more money. I'm just kidding. Just laugh louder. And I find it weird when people ask me, or rather than not, when people ask me where I'm from. And every time I tell them, I'm from Subang Jaya, the first thing that comes to their mind is, this rapper Joe Flizzo say, budak Subang Jaya memang ada gaya macam hari raya. Direct translation, it means Subang kids have style, they dress up every day like it's Eid Mubarak. I have style, my style's like the internet, one's wireless, I'm stylish. But fashion isn't really my thing. In fact, I never really understood why some people wear jeans with holes. To be honest, I thought they were glorifying being poor. And at times I'm confused, like, are you homeless? Are you hipster? Are you hipster homeless? Like, to me they just look the same. But people are willing to pay the price for things that have holes, like donuts, Swiss cheese, our legal system. You probably, if you're not laughing, you probably didn't find the loophole. And I was looking at the topic there, like AI and HR, so probably some related jokes about it. Like, say like AI is going to take over some of our jobs, right? And AI is short for artificial intelligence. And AI in Mandarin is pronounced as I, which means love. So if you have something like AI taking away our jobs, how can you give some I to AI? Right, let's think it. Well, probably I've got more stuff to talk about HR because, especially it means human resource, but I probably think it means human relationship because you're trying to get a candidate for your company, it's trying to get a romantic partner. But at least on dating apps, it's not that brutal, compared to what HR do with our resumes. Imagine swiping left and then you ask your option. So what would you like to do with this profile? Would you like to crumple it and put it in a dustbin? Would you like to put it in a shredder? Or would you like to use it as a placemat for your nasi lemak? And then get to the point of meeting that person. I find it easier to get interviews compared to dates, but I think it should be done equally, right? Like, at least you should meet the person and then say, okay, while waiting for me, you should fill out some personality tests. And I say like, okay, you done your personality test. I'm sorry, we can't date. You're an INFP, I'm an ISTJ. We can't get together. And when you finally meet, it's like match made in heaven. Until it comes to a point where it's time to leave. And I think being fired and being divorced is kind of the same thing. You have to pay money for the other person to leave. And probably before I go, I'll leave you with one last thing. I'm doing a job that might be replaced by HR or probably not. Probably it's been around since World War II or something. I'm doing insurance. Yeah, every day I wear a suit and tie, and it still scares people. So that's my Halloween costume, 365 days in a year. And anyone watch the Freddie Mercury biopic, Bohemian Rhapsody? Yeah. And I was thinking, if Freddie Mercury were to write a song about insurance in Mandarin, it'd be called Bohemian Rhapsody. Yeah, Bohemian is actually it's not Mandarin. Bohemian is Cantonese for insurance. Yeah. See that? Yeah. And probably if my life was a musical, it would be that, especially that particular part. Because insurance is a rejection business, right? So every time I approach someone, the music will start playing. It's like, hello sir, no, mamma mia, but I haven't said a word. My family has a song put aside for me. With that, that's my time, James. Thank you so much, and enjoy the rest of the show of today. Back to your MC.
Thank you, Mr. James Su. Okay. Without further ado, I would like to invite our distinguished panelists and moderator to be seated on stage.
No, I okay. The MCC. Music here. Music here.
Okay, our moderator for today is Mr. Patrick Klotz. He's a CEO and Director of Data Links Senja Berhad. And starting from his left, Mr. Homam Alghorani, CEO and founder of Wonderland Technology Senja Berhad. Anthea Low, okay, data scientist, Quantatics, and Caroline Ong, country general manager, Leaderonomics. Okay. Without wasting any more time, I would like to invite Mr. Patrick Klotz to conduct the session.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you very much for coming. We have a small audience today, but I'm still happy for everyone who made the time coming here. We figured out still some Raya celebrations going on, so a lot of people could not come today. Furthermore, I also would like to thank again the sponsors. Very happy of all to Collabs for providing us this amazing space here. And then of course TradeQuest Beam and Elements. Thanks James for the fun part that we had so far. I think we cannot make it that fun here, but still we hope to entertain you with the discussion that we have here. First of all, I just figured out we should call it AI versus HC, not HR anymore. But okay, we learned something. The panelists already introduced, but still I want to give you some time to introduce yourself a little bit more, especially the company you're working for, what the company is doing. Maybe start from the left side, please.
Hi everyone, I'm Anthea. I work for a company called Quantatics. So Quantatics is a local consulting firm that's based in Cheras right now. So my company, we have three main pillars in what we do. So we call it SST. So S, the first one stands for software. My company, we carry tools that cover the end-to-end journey of a big data project. So all the way from data engineering to data visualization to data analytics. We carry tools for each phase of it. And our second pillar is services, which is where we use the software that we also carry. And we have projects with customers, project basis. Like for example, right now we're working with TM, for example, to set up their data warehouse using Talent and their whatever data warehousing option they choose. So that's one customer. So my company, we cover industries all the way from retail to government to banking, telco. So there is no limit to the type of industries that my company is open to. And the last pillar we have is called T, which stands for training. So because we have multiple tools, we have multiple projects, after we're done with the projects, most of the time we have to do knowledge transfer, or we have to train the staff in that company to be able to use the products that we've created for them. So that's how we came up with a separate subsidiary just for training. So in our training subsidiary, we also have a flagship course that covers the entire end-to-end journey of big data as well. So like phase 1, we have data engineering. You can use tools like Talent. If it's data warehousing, we use Hadoop, Cloudera. If it's analytics, we have RapidMiner. If it's for business visualization and data visualization, we carry Tableau and Spotfire as well. So all of these things, we also have either our own standard training courses, or we also customize it for the customers as well. Yeah. So that's just a brief explanation of what my company does. Yeah, moving on.
Thank you. I'm lost. With whatever terminologies those are. I'm on the people side of the business. My name is Caroline, and I manage the Malaysia business. The name of my company is Bidronomics, so we are actually a social enterprise that looks at developing people for the nation. And we do that all the way from 8 years old, all the way to the corporate. So basically, I take care of the corporate side of the business. And what that means is we work with different companies to look at what they need for their people skills and people side, not resources. Of course, it's still a very needed thing. I think resource is still something that is commonly used, although capital is a nicer word, as what Brandon pointed out. And really is people up. Yeah, but basically what we do in Bidronomics is making sure that the people in your company, and being in a startup, I think on today's context, it's very important that if you are starting up a business, I think the people element is very important. It can make or break your business. Besides I think Daniel just now talked about the market that you are in as a startup. I think that's also very important. But the people element would be your sustainability factor if you were to continue to be in the business. So that's what we do. A lot more technicalities, but I think that's enough for now.
So my name is Homam. I'm the founder and CEO of Wonderland Technologies. So Wonderland Technologies, we like to call ourselves a sci-fi solutions provider. So what I mean by that, we see the technology fantasies in sci-fi movies, and we try to bring them to our showrooms, museums, galleries, and retail stores. So we started with interactive screen, something like a Minority Report, and then we did hologram, something like Iron Man movie or Star Wars, and then we stumbled into AI. So it was actually a client request, so they were looking on how they can make the concierge or the information counter, how they can digitize that and use AI and use hologram. That's where they bring us to provide the customers with better or with a more cost-effective solution. So that's where I realized actually the AI is not anymore a sci-fi thing. It's now, I can see companies in Malaysia trying to look into that. So I think if I want to talk about my company, my background, we will need hours for that. So I think with this introduction, I think I did the job.
Thank you very much. So you can see Caroline more from the people side, and then the two panelists more from the AI side. So the first part, we want to dig more a little bit in the current status of AI and how the skills developed over the last few years. And the second part, we go more into the future and have also probably a debate, or I hope a good debate on how we see AI will disrupt really people or HR or HC in the future. So my first question goes
Patrick,
to
just because of that, right? Should I sit on one end, so it's an AI versus HR? Is that how it's supposed to work?
I thought it was good to have you as a barrier, because I know these two guys have different opinions on AI, so I don't want them to fight.
Okay, so I'll give them a pass. Is that how it works? Okay, that's the people side. I'll give them.
Yeah, you should act as the human here between the Okay, let's go into the first questions, and I would like to address those to Anthea, to Homam. Maybe you can give the audience a little bit an idea on where you see the current status of AI, some use cases, some ideas. We know AI is all around us already, but sometimes you're not aware. So how do you see AI today, what it does, what it can do already, without going like what it will be able to do, just like what is around today?
Okay. So about AI. Actually, AI is nothing new. AI started in 1959. So it has been there around now 50 years, let's say. So why now all of a sudden people talking about AI? Okay, well, even the concept of AI started a long time ago. AI could not, it was like what we call in winter time. So it was sleeping until certain things need to be done first for the AI to come over and disrupt as it's doing now, or start to doing now. So before, for the AI, or especially the machine learning part to work, we need a lot of data. So back then, or let's say even 20 years ago, or 10 years ago, we could not have enough data for the AI to be trained. Because AI, what is it? It's an algorithm, and it needs a lot of data to learn from it and to come up with the conclusion, decision, and different things. So first, we didn't have enough data. So now, thanks to smartphones, to IoT devices, all these sensors now in your house or in the street, or those cameras also, the CCTV around, and social media. So now we have a huge amount of data generated every second. So that's the fuel for AI. Then also back then, even if you had all this data, how are you going to manage that data? So we needed big data to come to place. So that's why AI needed to wait first for the data, second for the managing the data by using certain type of databases, because the file system, the traditional databases cannot manage trillions of terabytes that's generated every day. Then the third thing is the processing power. We need a lot of processing power to process that huge data. So GPUs was not that advanced, but thanks to computer games, now GPUs are cheaper and faster. So now we have GPUs. The last element which we needed is the connectivity. So 20 years ago, 30 years ago, you will not connected all the time. Last time we used to use those dial-up. If you want internet, you just connect at that time. So now the case is not like this anymore. Now we all connected. Now every device is connected. Now your TV is connected. Now your fridge may be connected. Your aircon, everything connected. And now we have wireless connection. So even if you're not in the house, you are in the street, you are in the LRT. We have Wi-Fi, we have 3G, we have 4G, and now we have 5G coming. So okay, I think I took too long. Okay.
We have 4 mics, so I cannot interrupt.
Okay, I want to lay down the foundation. Why? Okay, now AI start to come. So now you can see what was the question?
That's not how it works. I think we got like a nice history of AI already. I'm happy it started only 1959 and not like with the dinosaurs. Yeah.
Give me
No.
1 second.
I'll give it later. But Anthea, maybe you can focus on the question. You will say, what is the current status of AI? What are some use cases that we see in everyday life?
So we've talked about like what AI is in general. So I think in terms of we're bringing it back more to the HR context would be a good example that I think a lot of companies don't realize they can actually tap into it is that without actually needing to go through the content of emails, for example, let's just say we just analyze the way certain emails go from this staff to another staff, and we can link the connections between the staff to see, okay, is this team working within this team only, or is this team working with other teams, or is there are a lot of communication between different departments. So this is one of the use cases that you can use AI, because I think a lot of people, when they think of AI, they think of all the really advanced things like Siri, Alexa, all those sci-fi movies where you have a butler robot standing next to you, or just need to wear an earpiece and you have an AI listening to whatever you have to say. But I think people tend to go too far in that sense because of all this Hollywood portrayals. Actually, AI can go down to even the granular level of just understanding how your staff is interacting among themselves. So if, let's say, an example would be, I always see this one person, one staff is always communicating with the rest of the suppliers or the rest of the vendors, then there you can actually detect a potential of what if this staff leaves the company, how will it impact the way that the vendor communicates with the company, because you only have one point of contact in this company with an entire supplier outside the company. So as a HR's role is to make sure that even if a staff were to leave or a new staff were to come in, it doesn't disrupt the way the business is being run, or it can only, if this person leaves, then HR will know, okay, I can see that this person is a really key personnel, and based on the way that he's communicating with people outside, he is a very crucial part in what we're doing in the business, let's say. So this might be an important client, for example. So then the HR can use the way, analyze their email data to see that, is this person also contacting someone outside of the company using the company email, or is there a lot of other people outside of the company trying to approach this staff? So me as an HR, of course, if I see that this person has high potential in the company, brings high value to my company, the last thing I want is for this person to be taken away or taken out of the company. So this is where HR can step in with the assistance of AI technology and step in and say like, hey, I realize that your behavior seems to exhibit some kind of tendency that you want to leave the company. Then the HR, the human part comes in, where I talk to you like, is there anything that you're not happy with the company? Can we talk about it? Perhaps we can, adjust maybe your benefits. So there's a lot of elements where the human comes in, but without the AI technology of being able to spot this kind of patterns, no matter how much the HR staff wants to assist in keeping you as a staff, they don't know. So the use case for this is that AI, what it does is it assists the HR department in having a clearer picture of what's going on among the staff. It's not to say that HR will be redundant and AI is just there to take care of all the staff in the company. In a way, AI is an assistant to your HR department. So instead of having to go through when people think of HR, they think of a lot of redundant tasks, like paperwork, administrative work, having to answer the same question with 50 staff, for example. So that's where technologies like chatbots come in. And so that instead of me having to correspond with 50 staff, answering the same question again and again, especially during the early beginning of the month when you have new hires coming in, most likely that my past experience working in Media Prima, for every month they would hire up to, I think, at least 50 to 100 people for the entire group. And most of the time they will probably be having the same questions, but because you don't have an AI aspect in the company, for example, I would have to send 50 emails to the same HR person. And then me as a HR person, yes, I can say that, I'll just have to, from an external perspective, you can just say that, I can just reply to that 50 emails. How hard is it? The problem is, we never said it was hard. It was just that it was redundant. It's wasting resources, it's wasting time. So that's where chatbots come in, where perhaps your staff, they can just send a message to this chatbot, and chatbot will recognize that this question is something that's always asked by people, so they would have a generic answer. Because if you think about it, HR staff, the way they reply to your staff inquiries, it's not like they have a different answer for different staff members. They always have a generic response. So why use a human to do something that is so repetitive? Why not just use AI, which is something that you can train it to do a specific task? So that's one of the main use cases for AI in HR. So there's a lot of aspects where AI can be used. So chatbot is just one of them. But if you look across all the multiple examples, The general idea is that
The current AI stats in HR or in general?
Just in general.
In general, okay. Because in general, I think you guys now dealing with AI all the time without realizing it, or maybe some of you realizing it. Because if you remember last time, maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, when we buy a newspaper, so it's the same news for everyone. So they print 100,000 copy or 1 million copy, whatever. It's the same news. It's the same news feeds for everyone. Now let's say Facebook. Facebook choosing what news feeds you are. So if they have 2 billion account, means they have 2 billion different news feeds. So each one news feed is different. That is studying your habits, studying what you like, what you watch, how long you spend time. So it recommend you based on your friends. Your friends recommend you different news feeds. Same thing with Netflix. Same thing with Instagram. Now even Grab. So last time when you used to call the taxi company, the operator need to broadcast. Now AI choose the car for you, decide the rate, and assign you the. So we are dealing with AI now all the time. And okay, AI has two sides. So there is what we call it augmented intelligence, with what Anthea mentioned, when AI help human to get rid of the redundant work and let the human focus on what is more important. But also there is the artificial intelligence when AI is replacing the human, because any low-skill job is going to be replaced. So that's what my take on the kind of.
That's a very good point, and that brings me to Caroline with the first question also. How do you see, or did you see, like jobs changing over the past 3 to 5 years, if any, due to AI, right, or due to the advancement? How do you see maybe even the skills already changed, like 3 to 5 years in the past until today? Is there any significant change already that happened, or is it now only going to change?
I think it has been happening, but like what Homam said, it depends on which part of the value chain you are in. If you are in the lower value chain where your job is data input, of course that will go away, right? And that has been going away for the past 3 to 5 years. And I think those from banking, that is the most obvious one. It always starts from the things that you can automate, you can simplify, and that's where AI comes in very well. But I think for the higher value chain, I think there is even more emphasis on being able to deliver those value, because the lower levels are gone or going away, yeah. And that's why it's actually dependent on where you are on the value chain. Yeah.
What do you think about the skills itself? Is there like a change in the skill set that is in demand today that was maybe not in demand 5 years ago, or the other way around, like 5 years ago was a high demand, but today no one cares anymore if someone has this or that skills?
Right, I think skills by itself, for example, the things like the human skills, right, or the soft skills, like some people would call it, I think those are even in higher demand because of AI. Because that's where you need to take the data and analyze and apply it and be able to interpret and connect the dots, right? So I think those kind of skills are getting more and more important. But the skills, if you talk from a skills perspective, but if you talk from a job perspective, that's where we were just talking outside that 5-10 years ago, the job description of data scientists is like, huh? You know? But now you have people who put their resumes in, data scientists, wow, you know? Yeah, I think if you go by designations, I think things like data scientists, even when I speak to some of my clients, and because most of our clients are on the multinationals or local GLCs, the bigger ones, even in plantation, I was surprised a couple of years ago when they talk about new job descriptions like drone drivers. Yeah, I'm like, drone drivers I know that, you know, but drone drivers, and I think all these are all enabled by technology and AI. So this depends on which angle that you're looking at.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much, Caroline. So we saw like from Anthea and Homam how they interpret or like how they phrase the use case for AI. We see already a little bit Homam how we discussed sometimes before also is more the opinion that well, all jobs will get lost in the future. So AI will take over, there will be robots doing our jobs, we have no jobs anymore. There is more the idea that AI is very helpful in terms of working hand in hand with people. So I would like to dig a little bit more in these very, very different opinions and hear your arguments for that. So maybe Homam, you start like what gives you the opinion like all jobs will be gone, and maybe also an idea like in how much time you think this will happen. Is this in can we still finish like before we get retired or is it like do I have to look for like a nice place to stay at the beach side already in 5 years? What's your idea on this?
Okay, so according to the author of AI Superpowers, I'm not good in names, but you can look his name. I think his name Kai something. So he's saying 50% of the jobs in 15 years will be gone. So talking about cashiers, talking about maybe accountants, nurses, all these kind of jobs which let's say consider low skill job are going to be gone. So if we go back to history, because I love history, we have to go back to history to learn about what's going on now. Because actually, if we look at the future, nobody knows. Even in the job market, I'm telling you 50% of the job, but still nobody can tell for sure. So this is for the short term. 50 anything low skill job will be gone. In the long term, you know, AI now doing because before we can tell people focus on creative stuff, your job will be safe. But you know, to be honest with you, we don't know, because now AI is doing art. You know, if you know that, the first AI drawing or art was sold for $500,000 US. So now AI doing art, AI composing music. There's a few companies doing that. You can give the AI now a small melody, and it can compose you a full song. So now it starts to do even creative jobs. So to tell you all jobs will be gone, I can't tell that for sure, but as I said, all those low-skill jobs will be gone, because if we look at the past, first people were doing agriculture. When automation comes to agriculture, they move to cities, they become working in factories. Then when automation comes to factories, they move to services, so they work as a cashier in bank or other jobs in services. Now AI coming to services. So what after services? We don't know. That's the problem. For sure, AI will create new jobs, as it will eliminate a lot of jobs. But the charm there, like if someone is a lorry driver and now lorries are driven by itself, can you think a 40 years lorry driver is going to become some AI expert or drone driver? Can he do that jump? Because the sad thing, I don't think he can do that. So we will have, if you see a historian called Yuval Noah Harari, he predicted there will be something called the useless class. So if you want to talk about that, I need 1 hour.
I know. I was already ready here to interrupt you. Anthea, what makes you confident that your opinion like human and AI will work hand in hand to achieve greater goals? That this will happen, and I still have to work until I'm 65. In Malaysia, in Switzerland, it's 65. So I will still have a job and continue doing what I'm doing.
I think instead of approaching it in a sense like, will my job scope be redundant? It's more like, how can I change myself so that I can be relevant to the job? You know, so a good example is I thought of, if you saw the movie Hidden Figures. It was talking about based on the true story of 3 black women and how they helped NASA do the calculation that was necessary to land a human on the moon. So in the movie, it was during a time where they would have rooms full of people just doing calculations. That towards the end of the movie, IBM's computer was reviewed, and how instead of them fearing that they've lost their jobs, they actually adapted and learned how to use the IBM computer instead. So I think if we can have that kind of approach when it comes to new technologies emerging, which happens pretty often historically, as you can see, every few decades you would have a huge disruptive phase where everyone's like fearing for their lives, fearing for their jobs, saying that they don't have work. But instead of submitting to that fear, the common sense would be to just improve yourself so that you can adapt to the new world, and so that you can, instead of your current job, sure, your current title might be irrelevant after a while, but why don't you think about, the possibility of your job title changing to something that's even better or something that's even more advanced. So that I think is one main aspect when it comes to the whole AI versus humans element, is that humans are so focused on the fear of the change of the status quo, is that they always forget that change has been happening all the time. And you can't just say that, I don't want this change, so AI is a bad thing, like AI is replacing humans and all that. But the thing is, humans have been replacing humans throughout history. So can we say like, I'm against humans for taking my jobs? It doesn't work like that. So in the context of AI and HR, I think a good way would be to change yourself first before complaining about the change. And the best thing about AI is that, as you can tell, even though it's something that has been going on for a long time, and as Homam mentioned, it's actually in every aspect of your life, know that we actually still have a lot of time. Nothing is actually rushing us and saying like, hey, if you don't pick up this skill by tomorrow, you're gonna get fired. And this phase has been going on for a long time, and the people who are at risk of being displaced have been complaining the entire time instead of doing something about it, instead of like taking the time to go for training. So like, for example, events like this, there are lots of events, there's lots of materials online. Instead of using that as an advantage, again, they view that as an enemy and be like, hey, I don't like how all these people are sharing information on how to become more data analytical, data driven online. Instead, they view it as a negative thing. So I think, so in the context of this topic is like, changes are inevitable, and we should know that there are a lot of ways for us to improve at this time. So like for me, my background wasn't in data science at all. In fact, data science is a general field, it's not just about programming or equations and all that. It's like, for example, a very simple use case of just understanding why a customer wants to leave, like churn prediction. So a lot of the basis of data science use cases is just that we have questions and we want to answer the questions, and the means of us in answering the questions through the algorithms and all the stuff is just because humans, a lot of times when we see data sets that are like slightly bigger in size, it seems like it's so random and it doesn't make sense to us. But to a machine, what is random to us is a pattern to them. So instead of viewing machine learning as a replacement, you have to understand that machine learning algorithms and deep learning algorithms, which are what AI is all about, are actually all developed by humans. So actually recently there's also even a experiment that was conducted by scientists where they only input very negative data sets inside an AI. So I think the article was like the first psychopathic AI, and the name was like, I forgot what the name was. So what they did was that instead of pumping images of regular things, they actually pumped information on like gruesome crime scenes, of like how criminals behave, how the characteristics that psychopaths have, and they created a psychopathic AI where when they did like ink blot tests, a human were to see, let's say, a vase with flowers in it, the AI actually came up with the caption of someone is killing his wife, something like that. So that is what AI is capable of, is what humans pump into the AI that trains your AI. So a lot of people, they think like AI will have its mind of its own. No, it's just that AI is the ability to train a artificial intelligence system to think like a human. But at the end of the day, a human, if I were to be taught by a mafia boss versus someone else who is taught by the Dalai Lama, you can see that the outcome will be very different. So it's all about the training process. So unless there is a human that trains the AI into thinking that humans are useless, humans are dumb, and humans should be replaced, and that how a human behaves is wrong, then the AI will perceive humans in that way. Then if that thing happens, then perhaps we should be a bit scared of humans wanting to overtake humans.
Okay.
Yeah.
Homam, what's your idea? It's quite simple, right? We just have to change, adopt, not let the bad people influence AI, and then we're all safe.
Well, I wish it was that simple. Okay, I agree with you that we need to change is coming, AI is coming, I have no doubt about that. And we should like change our title, adapt the new skills, but okay, if we think about it realistically, if you go back and when you were 18 years old, when you decided what you want to be, you remember that when it was very hard for you to decide, I want to be an accountant, I want to be a scientist, I want to be a lawyer, I want to be a doctor, or I don't want to do college, I just want to jump to work. So, do you remember how challenging that was? So it was very challenging. Now with technology, the disruption, maybe for you not, but I think for many people, they were lost when they were 18 or 17, they don't know what they want to be. So, if it was that difficult at 18 years old, now with technology disruption, you need to reinvent yourself maybe every 5 to 10 years. So, let's say somebody at 20 years old decided, I'm not going to study, I'm going to become a lorry driver. Like in US, it is the most popular job. So that's what we need. We need to look at the maths. We do not need to see ourselves the elite who went to college and did master and they go to training and conferences. No, let's say in US, the most popular job is a lorry driver. So if a lorry driver now in US, and this will happen very soon, I think in 5 years, this lorry driver going to, like in Malaysia, taxi drivers lost their job. So let's say this lorry driver who started doing this at 20, now he's at 30, he think, okay, I need to reinvent myself. So what I want to be, okay, I see many people now like meditation, like all these wellness things, so I will become a yoga instructor. So he picked up that, he learned how to be a yoga instructor and he became a yoga instructor, okay? So let's say, let's go in the future, we go another 10 years, now we start to have wearables and some sensor you put in your body and it gives you the best meditation experience. Now the yoga instructor become irrelevant. Now that guy already become 40 years old, he need now to reinvent himself, become something. So when we talk about 18, 20, you invent yourself, was difficult, then at 30 it's more difficult, then at 40 it's even more difficult. So how at 50, how at 45? It's almost impossible. I find it difficult for majority of people to easily reinvent themselves. So what's the solution? The solution, go back to education, go back to government. Instead of teaching or to parents teaching your child to be one thing, like a lawyer, like an accountant, because we don't know what the future is going to look like. You need to teach them mind flexibility. You don't need to have all the knowledge. Now AI will handle everything for you. You ask Siri any question, who's the third prime minister, it will tell you, you don't need to study history. So, I like it.
Anthea, you want to reply to them? Not to the primary, you don't have to study anymore. Who was the former prime minister? No, it was not the question. The question is more like if you want to reply to Homam, right? If he said it's difficult to do it. Of course, I agree it's difficult to change jobs, but how do you see that?
My reply to that is, it's going to sound a bit cruel, but at the same time it's going to be very realistic, is that unfortunately if you can't invent yourself, that is your problem. Time is not going to stop changing, innovation is not going to stop just because you can't keep up with it. So again, there is no solution to this
But
if you don't.
If you worry there will be protest in the street, there will be chaos, there will be things like that. Because you cannot say, oh, that's...
Is this now my room?
Yeah, maybe that goes too much into like civil war scenarios. Maybe I would like to have Caroline's opinion on the following. You mentioned also before, there's a lot of fear around, right? People losing their jobs, they know already, right? Like truck drivers know already, Grab drivers or taxi drivers know already their autonomous car will come. They will not have jobs anymore, right? How do you at Meetup or you personally reply to these questions or consult companies when it comes to these questions, to this fear, which can spread like across an entire company? Because if the company is like focusing on something they know it will be obsolete in 5 years, they will just out of business.
I think I agree with Homam, and also Anthea in a different way, is that I think the changes are inevitable and the speed of change is getting faster and faster. Yeah, and that's why we need to be agile, right? So in response to, I don't think, however, Homam, there will be chaos. I think AI is here, but I've not seen chaos. I've not seen zombies running around or any fear that is in that sense, yeah? So I think the fear is real for people at the lower end of the value chain. Lorry drivers, yeah, as an example. But that fear, and in organizations, for example, financial institutions that we work with, at those levels, there is a fear that they will be replaced. But again, it's true. It's true, right? There are even bots now with names, right, in different financial institutions. They even give them names, right? And efficiency level, productivity level is so high. So how do you then move these people to a different type of job just based on skill set? I think that's the key, right? You have different skills and the same skills can be applied into different types of job. That is what needs to be done. You have to upskill people in terms of the category of skills, number one, but also the fear or the mind elasticity or plasticity of mind, being able to expand our thinking into different areas rather than just being stuck, I am a cashier, I am a data input or process person. So how do we then change that mindset? And how do we then equip people with the next level of skills? And typically we would say, do the skills that is adjacent to what you do. You can't be, honestly, I think it's very difficult from a lorry driver to a yoga instructor. I think that's really difficult, right? But if, let's say, from a lorry driver or a Grab driver, taxi driver to a Grab driver, right? That's how we can, in the workplace it's the same, right? So if you cannot be a taxi driver, stop protesting, just be a Grab driver, right? And then you move on with life. I think that's what Anthea is trying to say. So I agree with him and her in a slightly different way.
Okay, that's nice. Honestly, I will be quite happy if more truck drivers would do, not teachers, but at least do some yoga. They're like more relaxed when they're driving. That would be very helpful, maybe also.
Less road rage.
That's what I was referring to. Yeah, less road rages. But Carolyn, what do you think, or what is your opinion, or how do you consult companies, like in terms of skills, right? What are the future skills that you see, especially, let's not say the hard skills, but the soft skills, like the human skills, that we should develop more to be more agile, to be more open, and can then faster adapt to these changes? Do you have like certain skills that you say, this is like something we should teach more, we should learn more to be ready?
Yeah, I think, and that yoga teacher is a good, is a good example of that. Not that we all need to be yoga teachers. I can't do yoga, But I think basically is that whole emotional intelligence, collaboration skills, the being comfortable with your being so that you are not being challenged by somebody whenever there are changes, but you are actually being challenged by yourself. How do you be a better version of yourself? And how do you see the better in people so that whatever data sets that you're working with, it's with the intention of collaboration and being able to make better use of that. I think there's a lot of that in general. But when you talk about specific company skill sets, it very much depends on where they are in this movement. And honestly, I think in Malaysia, in most companies that we're talking about, the majority of the companies have yet to achieve this level of adaptation of AI. We are not there. Yeah, and because of that, the change is still very gradual. And I like history lessons, 1959, for example, right?
Yeah.
When AI first started, and what it is now, 2019, we are barely dipping our toes in it. So if you look at that whole time lapse and transition, we are not there. So I think there's no fear. I'm quite sure, Patrick, you will live till 65 in your career and move on, going back to your original
35 years.
Yeah, so I think the transition is honestly
Everyone is
that.
calculating.